Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, April 14th, 2021 meeting of the Lebanon Utility Service Board. We're all glad to be back here in person, and let the record reflect that the meeting was properly advertised and that all board members are present tonight. First thing we'll do is stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item tonight is approval of our minutes from the March 17th, 2021 meeting. Everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, any questions? I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I make a motion we approve the minutes for March the 17th.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Aaron to approve the minutes of the meeting from March 17, 2021. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I think we're going to do a little agenda shuffle here tonight. Is that right, Ed?
Yes, thank you. I would like to move the sanitary sewer overflow response plan up to in front of item 4, because I have some staff from BF, and that's helping me with the presentation, so
Yep.
it's going to work out better that way.
Sure. All right, so we have John Leitner, John Brand here from BF&S, and guys, if you don't mind jumping up here in the order, that'd be great.
Yeah, we have a little slideshow. I guess John's going to run the slides for me, and I'm going to kind of kick it off and then turn it over to John. We did have, in the gap since our last meeting, we did have a sanitary sewer overflow, and it did get some attention in the news reporter. We were already working on that problem, though, so I just wanted to kind of describe for the board our current plans and kind of go over it with you. So, so let me start the presentation. It's called Sanitary Sewer Overflows for Lebanon Utilities. Bye. Okay, for today's discussion, we're going to talk about what are sanitary sewer overflows, or SSOs as we call them in the industry, cover what SSOs are in our system at Lebanon Utilities, what causes SSOs, and the plans that BF&S has helped us with and are still in progress for eliminating SSOs. And what are SSOs? They're an unpermitted release of untreated sewage from a municipal sanitary sewer. To give you some context, there's about 3,000 SSOs a year in the state of Indiana. They vary in severity. Some of them are thousands of gallons. Some of them are relatively small, like the SSO that I think we last reported was under 10,000 gallons. If you go to the IDEM website, you can find a list of about 272 pages with about 12 SSO incidents listed per page. So that's where I get the 3,000 numbers. We used to be a CSO community. CSO stands for Combined Sewer Overflow. In the past, it used to be okay to design a sewer system so it was purposefully connected to the stormwater, and they actually planned on it being okay if the sewage overflowed when it rained. But we have, modern systems aren't designed that way. We're no longer a CSO community, and there's many communities that have what they call LTCPs, or long-term control plans, because the expense of getting out of being a CSO community takes a long time. Citizens Energy Group in Indianapolis has a consent decree where they have an LTCP. Just trying to give you some context on it. So, and of course, ask me questions along the way. Did I adequately explain what an SSO is? So, all right, next slide, please. Okay, one of the ways we prioritize our plans is we do hazard rankings. We look at the risk of something happening by how often it may happen. The number one thing on our hazard ranking is sanitary sewer overflows. Second thing is creek crossing failure. We have a good picture later on to describe that more clearly, but if a pipe breaks in a creek, that could be a big environmental disaster for us and hard to fix. They're probably the two most serious ones, most likely ones. They're all serious. But wastewater treatment plant mechanical issue, if our raw water pumps for our wastewater plant were to fail, sewage would back up in the whole system. That was listed because a lot of plants there's enough elevation drop, they're at a low point where they don't even have raw water pumps, things gravity flow in or come from lift stations, but we have these big raw water pumps that we need to pay a lot of attention to. There's cyber attack. There's been cyber attacks in the news. Most recently, I think during our break between meetings, they had a big cyber attack in Florida on a water system. So we're very cognizant of that, and I think we're on top of that. A large sewer collapse could cause us a big problem. So sanitary sewer overflows, it was already identified in our plans two to 3 years ago as our biggest risk, and what we're really about trying to fix. We had a point system where SSO's got 105 points, creek crossing failure had 83 points, and the mechanical issues in the plant 65 points, and then 45 for the cyber attack, and the large sewer collapse are actually tied for fourth. So the Lebanon Utility Sanitary Sewer Overflow Response Plan is something we put together where with the help of BF&S, where we respond to sanitary sewer incidents. Whenever there's an overflow, our team of employees goes out and they'll check the manholes that have been problem areas and see when they're getting high. They will clean when it overflows. They will, in some cases, haul out of the main to prevent it from overflowing. And we also are in the midst of a wastewater study where we are going to determine capital expenses to solve these SSO problems that aren't currently in our plan. And this is probably the appropriate point to turn over to John, because he's going to get into some more detail on findings of that wastewater study that is not yet complete and plans we have to fix the SSOs we had so far this spring. So.
All right. As Ed said, I'm John Leitner with Butler Firm and Seifert. If anybody has any questions, this is going to be pretty informal, so we'll kind of get started. Talk a little bit about SSOs and the Lebanon utility system. Right now we have 8 recurring SSOs. Kind of want to define what I would call recurring. In any wastewater system, sanitary sewer overflows are likely going to happen. We'll get into more of the causes here in a little bit, but they're almost unavoidable. The thing you don't really want is, I guess, recurring or chronic. Recurring is what I would call something that happens at least once a year. You know, when it's raining, the guys right now have a route that they take when there's a forecast of a big rain where they know these certain areas are going to happen. Right now, we had 11 of them. We recently eliminated 3 of those, so that's where we're coming up. We have 8 left. Just want to talk a little bit about the system overall and what we're doing on the overall wastewater system evaluation that we've been working on here for actually the last couple of years now. Your system right now has 15 kind of distinct sewer basins that all interact with each other, with the whole goal is to get sewage from people's houses or businesses to the wastewater treatment plant. You can see that figure on the right is a flow schematic of how those basins kind of interact with each other. When we talk about where we have these recurring SSOs, they occur in basin B and C are 7 out of the remaining 8 that we have. Basin D and E I have highlighted there as well because they actually flow to basin C and help cause those issues, I guess. There is one sanitary sewer overflow that's in basin K. It's kind of an outlier that has its own kind of distinct problem, but you can kind of see our issues that we have on Victoria Drive and then kind of over in the Brennanwood area west of Ewan Country Club. They're actually kind of interrelated. They're on that same flow track to get to the wastewater treatment plant. So what causes SSOs is kind of what we need to figure out in order to figure out how to fix them. As I said, almost all systems will have SSOs at one time. Usually, if you have a perfectly working, perfectly designed system, at some point, there's going to be a blockage. There might be construction waste, or somebody's going to dump something down that they're not supposed to, or just leaves and debris get caught up. Might overwhelm the system, have a backup. Equipment failure, that would be pumps in a lift station stop working, can't get it out. There's no response plan for that. In some communities, that might back up, cause things like that. Infiltration and inflow, which we've given presentations on before and talked about at length, is the sewer might be designed correctly, but if there's cracks or leaks and there's too much stormwater getting in during heavy rain events, that could cause some backups and problems too. And then kind of probably what we'll focus most on today is just undersized sewers or maybe a poor sewer design in the end.
John, may I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
When it comes to blockages, would a category of that also be a line that has over a period of years accumulated various hard debris that
Sure.
reduces the size of the pipe in essence?
Yeah, I would say blockages could be a flow restriction of any kind. So that's correct.
Yeah, I think John has some pictures later in the presentation that'll kind of make that point for you.
Yep. So kind of start off in this, the Marley area, which is the area that we recently had in SSO. And the SSO that we had recently, as I would say, is kind of a recurring theme in this area where, again, it's probably every spring, every fall, we have one where the ground's more saturated than usual, we get a heavy rain, and the guys are kind of, I'd hate to use the term used to it, but they are expecting it, and they're going out and checking it ahead of time, trying to block off the street if they know that it's going to be a large rain, trying to get the start to clean up as quickly as possible. So what's causing this issue, it appears, in the Marley area is along Victoria Drive, where you see those 3 locations where there's SSOs indicated. What I would call this is an undersized sewer design. So you have an 8-inch pipe, a 15-inch pipe, and a 12-inch pipe all coming together and trying to leave through a 15-inch pipe. Looking at the capacities, looking at some of our flow monitoring data, it's all kind of backing that up. There's just too much water, too much waste coming to one spot, and not enough pipe for it to leave through. When we look at the Brennanwood area, really kind of to the east of Dairy Queen, to the west of Uland Country Club, we have a line that runs kind of actually back behind the Brennanwood neighborhood to the south, behind the houses, kind of along the fence line. That's another trunk line where you have a couple of different sanitary sewer basins are kind of coming together at one point. But where they're coming together is another bottleneck. So we can see there's a 12-inch pipe and a 15-inch pipe that are coming together, and they meet at a 12-inch pipe. And then that actually goes to a 15-inch pipe, but even the 15-inch pipe's not big enough. So that's where we're seeing, water takes the path of least resistance, even when it's wastewater. If it's got nowhere to go, it's going to back up into those lower sewers and spill out of the manholes.
John, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
On the left side of that picture where the 15-inch pipe is,
Yeah.
is that a dual pipe? Is that the dual pipe where there's one pipe beside another one?
No, it is not.
That's not there?
No, this is all a gravity trunk sewer.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So any other questions on those bottlenecks? It seems like such a simple concept, and you look back and you wonder, why did we do this? And I don't think we could tell you why this was done at the time, other than at the time it worked. As sometimes when you look at these things, we don't know what's upstream. At the time, it might have worked because necessarily there wasn't as much growth or development upstream in those type of areas as well.
Yeah, can I add on to that? I don't think that necessarily means it did anything wrong back then.
Sure.
It could have been, just one possible scenario is when they added, they had a 12 going in and somebody decided to upsize to a 15, thinking that was extra capacity. And then when someone tied in another 15, it could have been those pipes were so underused that they thought it was going to work. And they said, oh, we'll upsize this later when there's future growth. So it's just had to do with what EDUs were going and what was flowing into the system at the time, and we don't know. We're just trying to fix problems today.
Exactly.
Hey, John, in that example with the 15, 12, 15, is it as simple, and when I say simple, I know the project, of course, isn't simple. Is it as simple as swapping that 12 out for a 15, or is it make them all bigger? Or
See, and that's a great question. If Ryan Ottinger were here tonight, he could tell you that taking out, he was a water guy, he's taken over wastewater, and what you realize is you do one thing and it keeps dominoing down, especially when you're talking about gravity sewers. So that was our first hope, and when we started this overall wastewater study was, hey, that 12 inch is wrong, let's just put a 15 in. Unfortunately, a 12 plus a 15 is more than a 15 leaving if the slope's not right. So you really need more like an 18 inch or a 24 inch or a larger size sewer. So that's kind of where I was trying to highlight the 15 inch pipe even downstream of the 12 inch is not big enough even to accommodate it. And then if you take it one more down there, the picture's not back up, but it actually happens again. If you see like at manhole 2846, so 2965 down to 28, that's another 10 inch pipe. So then you have a 10 and a 15 coming together, and from 2846 to 2847 is a 15. So really the same thing happens twice in a row in this one spot.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
As I look around town and all the construction and everything going on, it looks like all the sewer pipes are 24 inch. Is that right?
It might be storm sewer. I don't think we put in any 24 inch sanitary sewer pipes recently. I wish everything was a 24 inch.
So it looks like 24 inch, and then it looks like stormwater is bigger than that, larger than that, but.
Sure, but what we did in the overall wastewater study is go through, we had somebody open up each manhole, take shots of what size these sewers are, take shots of the inverts and things like that.
Well, and John, let me just make a comment that I've sort of learned that I think Ed touched on to make sure that everybody understands that one of the things that I think to touch on Bill's point is that these are, some of this is growing pains from moving from an open loop system that dumped into the storm sewers. South Bend is going through a huge problem with that right now, and they're trying to get a handle on it. When the rules change, it's more than just pipe size and slope. There are different regulations that change and can cause backups and how this is managed. And so as we've gone from an open system to a closed system, we've had to rethink the design and try to adapt.
And Bill, to your point, the newer things that everybody's been putting in go through plan review. They are studied, make sure that the capacities are there, make sure everything's right. What we're talking about are sewers that have been in, for a very long time.
Right, and I understand we're trying to figure out, how to resolve the problem, so.
Yeah, it's, if I can go back to this slide. So if you see that number 4 dot that I have that's pointing Reynolds Drive and pointing to that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that's nowhere near the wastewater treatment plant. So when you fix something up there at the top, you almost have to keep, like a domino, like I'm saying, is you have to keep fixing stuff all the way down until it stops being a problem.
Right.
And where it stops being a problem for us on this north side is an 18-inch sewer that comes up to the north, which is, again, as you said, is not even that, 18 inches is still not that big. The ones on the south side, for the south side of town, are 42 inch, as you can, and even a 48 inch right upstream of the wastewater treatment plant, if you look at that flow schematic. So it's, again, it's usually there's not just a really quick, easy answer to fix these, is why they happen and why they kind of.
Because really, when you look at it, 8 inch, 12 inch, even 15 is not that big. 24 inch is not that big of a line.
They can handle 24 inch in wastewater world is a pretty big line. I mean, it'll handle quite a few EDUs, and your 15 inch are your trunk sewers really through this area. So like you're saying, when you look at it, you feel like it should be bigger.
Right.
And that type of thing, but the majority of lines in town are 10-inch, 8-inch.
Oh, I believe it.
So, again, if it were perfect world and we had all the money in the world, everything would be a 48-inch sewer and we'd never have to worry about it, but that's just not how things work, unfortunately, or how things were constructed in the past.
Right.
Are there any other questions kind of on the idea of undersized sewers, or I guess why these problems seem to be happening? And I got to say, the overall wastewater study, we knew these were problems, but having these inverts, knowing what the flows are and everything has been kind of invaluable to figure out exactly, the math is working out with what the guys are seeing in the field too. So as we talk about eliminating SSOs, probably the first ones, to Aaron's point, is look at sewer cleaning. We have in the budget this year that everybody put for in 2020, there's $100,000 in the budget for this year to start an interceptor cleaning program. So the staff and Ryan and Ed kind of saw that we were having issues with these gravity trunk sewers or interceptors. I kind of use those terms together. And actually we started looking into getting budgets and quotes and things like that before we had this most recent SSO. So we're already starting to look into things on how best and where best to spend that $100,000, which it was looking like that 18-inch that's downstream of Victoria Drive was the number one spot that we were already targeting. So that kind of falls in line. The other, another way we work on things, which you guys are aware of because we talk about them every year, is the sewer lining program. So this year we really focus that sewer lining program on Basin K, which is it's the worst basin in terms of the I&I percentage based off of the flow monitoring study we did. And that one actually again, the math kind of makes sense where that SSO that we see on North Outer Drive that's kind of near the Lebanon High School, that's in Basin K. So all of our lining this year was downstream of that, trying to see if that might not help. If we clear up the I&I in that basin, well, maybe that'll eliminate that SSO without having to do any kind of redirecting of flow or major capital project.
John,
Yeah.
you say we're spending $100,000 this year from the budget to clean selected lines. I noticed that we don't have any money in subsequent years for the cleaning. Is this cleaning a one-time thing that will be miraculous, or?
In talking with Ryan, no. I think this is something we've identified that needs to continue.
Yeah,
And I'm not even sure how far. I think as we were getting, I don't even think we have concrete budget numbers on how far is $100,000 going to get us cleaning.
So you haven't prioritized which lines to clean first?
In our talks beforehand, what we were starting at was going to start at the wastewater treatment plant and start up that 18-inch gravity sewer to the north, knowing that that's downstream of all these issues that we're having.
Yeah, let me jump in and just add a little detail there. There's two types of cleaning we're doing. There's the type that we can do ourselves where we have a jetter and our crew goes out and they can clean the smaller lines. But when you're talking about a trunk line like this, it's always got flow in it, it's always submerged, and this particular trunk line, based off of experience of the operators and some of the preliminary studies that BF&S has done, is not running at its right capacity. So we're pretty sure it's clogged, and it would really have a great benefit to the system. But in order to clean it, we're going to have to get a contractor in who's going to have to bypass this 18-inch line to the plant. We're going to be doing it dry weather. It's going to be a major evolution with them somehow bypassing our flow, maybe hauling it, doing it at a certain time of day, and then running a pig or a big machine up cleaning it. And so this is the first time we're doing this under Ryan's watch here. I don't think it's ever been done in Lebanon before. So we're going to do this first one. We're not even sure $100,000 is the right amount. We think it will be from early talks Ryan had with the contractors. We do this one, and we're going to see how it works out. But really knowing what to clean other than just going on tribal knowledge of what your people tell you, the best thing to do is flow monitoring, which has been in progress for about a year now, and we're getting close to wrapping up the wastewater study, because we really want to make sure we line the right places and clean the right places, especially when we're spending $100,000 to do it. So this will be the first go-around of it.
So if I understand, we have selected the 18-inch line that feeds south into the plant to start with, or are we thinking about doing that?
That's our
That's what he
preliminary.
selected. He's got a slide showing
Yeah.
that later, and the data supports that, so.
Correct, and that's also, with it being $100,000, I believe something that would come before the board with a recommendation, go out to bid, that type of thing, or at least go out for quotes, so. That was the due diligence that was being done, but that was the area that we were studying and really trying to see how far up into the system $100,000 will get you.
That 18-inch line serves those 8 SSOs, right?
Correct, they all make their way to seven out of
7 of them, 7 of them.
Yes.
A slide later that will illustrate that, right, John?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, this is that slide. So as we look at that, so this is where that 18-inch, it turns into a 15-inch right as it hits that Marley neighborhood. Yeah, the dash line is that trunk sewer. As Ed said, it's when you get 18-inch and get into that type of flow, the Lebanon Utilities just does not own the equipment that is needed to kind of handle that type of cleaning on that large of a scale. It's also, you can kind of see, it's not exactly like this is along a main road or very easily accessible, so there's a...
Let's see, where's the wastewater treatment plant on this diagram?
It is at the very bottom of the, you see that kind of that...
At 2304 or?
Yeah, right by 2304.
Okay,
That's
thank
the
you.
upstream manhole, so...
Oh, I see it now, okay.
As we're talking about things, but this is a good illustration of the sewer lining. This is not from Lebanon, so I don't know if you guys have any pipes that are quite that bad. But it just kind of gives a good illustration that not only are they lining, they're also cleaning. So they're doing some of these things as well in order to get that. But that's kind of, I would liken the cleaning to the sanitary lining program that you guys have been doing. You know, we're targeting areas, but it's almost a continuous thing. You know, even if we lined every pipe in the next 20 years, by that time you need to line the ones that you already lined. That type of thing. It's ongoing maintenance that we're looking at. Redirecting flows. So I just kind of wanted to highlight we have had some recent success on redirecting flows. This is just a quick diagram of what we did on that reroute of the 4-H Fairgrounds or Indianapolis Avenue lift station, however you want to term it. But that was going to Basin O, which ultimately got to Green Street. Green Street was 3 of our worst recurring SSOs. They would happen, you know, more than 2 times a year and have the most volume. So by rerouting that Indianapolis Avenue lift station flow from Basin O to Basin N, it's kind of a good thing to report. We have not had any Green Street SSOs since that time. That's why we're kind of listing those as eliminated as recurring. It's not to say that again, a blockage or something happened, that wouldn't be a spot to keep watching, but it seems like the redirection of flow in this scenario was what we needed to do to eliminate those. So with that idea on redirecting, that's kind of where we've come up with a preliminary concept on a lift station at Reese Park. The lift station would be upstream of those Victoria Drive manholes, with the idea being that we could kind of capture a certain amount of flow and direct it around that area and connect into, we have dual force mains that come from the north side lift station that go basically all the way to the plant. They go at the very downstream end of that 18-inch gravity sewer before tying in. So the idea would be for a force main from the lift station to tie into one of those dual force mains. It would save almost 5,000 feet of pipe that we wouldn't have to build. So it's kind of a creative solution we've come up with staff. That's the black line you'll see. The blue line, you'll see that's upstream of that lift station location. What we would propose is that be gravity sewer, but an upsized gravity sewer. If you remember, that's where the Brennanwood kind of comes in together, and 12s and 15s come together into 15s, and 10 and 15s, that same thing. But if we upsize that sewer to an 18-inch or a 24-inch and put it a little bit deeper, that should be able to eliminate our bottlenecks through that area. We can also, since we have the lift station, we can control how deep that everything is throughout that area, and try to give it a little bit more slope and a little bit more capacity.
So the blue and the black would be 24 inch?
Well, the blue would be a larger sewer than 15, so maybe 18, maybe 24. The black would not need to be, that would be a pressure pipe from the lift station. So the black line might only need to be an 8 or a 10 inch.
Yeah, that was a great question, because I want to highlight something, is that foreshadowing the future to fix some of our wastewater problems, when you put in force main, it's a pressurized line. You don't have to worry about slope, and you can generally, I don't know the rule of thumb as well as John does, because I don't design them anymore, but you could replace a 48 inch with maybe a 12 inch or even less, which is a whole lot less costly, and you can route it about any way you want, because it's like a water main, because it's pressurized. Whereas with a 48 inch, you'd have to find slope, inverts, and a lot more easement. So there were some old plants in Lebanon where they were wanting to put in 48 inch trunk lines all over town. That was never going to get done because it was just too expensive even back then. So I think this lift station is a good idea, and you'll see more on it later in the slideshow. But I think by the time they're done their wastewater study, there's going to be more lift stations in our future.
So yeah, that's really our concept. I mean, and what always, with that, kind of going back to those hazard rankings, our, sanitary sewer overflows were number 1, creek crossing failure was number 2, or potential creek crossing failure is actually how we should say it, because it hasn't actually happened before yet, knock on wood. If you look at this concept, the existing line where I have that circle is a crossing of the creek just east of Reese Park. And Ed was out there and took this picture. So this is what our creek crossings in multiple areas look like today. That gravity sewer line used to be under the creek. I think in the 1980s is what the staff remembered. There was a dredging project of the creek. Rather than go back through again because of that domino and lower the sewer with it, they would have to lower everything all the way back to the plant. They came up with this, I guess I would call it a creative solution of concrete collars with ductile iron pipe, which is a little bit beefier of a pipe than usual, to kind of combat that. I don't know if they always looked exactly like this, but there's definite concerns when you start seeing things right in the flow line as far as debris coming, hitting the pipe. There's also a concern with, if we did this in the 80s, we're probably about 40, getting to be 40 years old, 35, 40 years old on this stuff. We don't really know what the structure of those concrete collars are. They could cause a problem themselves if they get undermined. They could break the pipe. That would be an SSO, but kind of a very extreme case of an SSO, because you'd just be dumping, whatever's in the pipe directly into the creek. So again, with this project, what would be great is upstream of this lift station, we control the depth then with a different pipe, and we would fix that crossing as kind of an ancillary benefit. Yeah, where that circle is. Yep. So that kind of gets me to, I'll throw out a number and then quickly back away and have John get up here and try to take over.
I figured there was a reason he was here.
But basically, looking at everything that we need to do, putting the lift station in, putting in the force main, the gravity sewer, there are, again, problem areas with, not problem areas, but high cost amounts, I guess, with crossing the railroad with the force main, crossing the creek. multiple places, crossing the state road, going through parking lots. So a real preliminary budget estimate we had was around 2.75 to 3.25 million to do the whole project. The one thing I do want to point out, though, is using that, using one of those dual force mains and not having to run those lines likely saves around $1 million. So.
Say that again, please.
I said if you use one of those existing dual force mains that's coming from north side, you'd likely save about $1 million of what you would have had to
Okay, thank you.
spend. So, like I said, I'll slowly or quickly back away and let John step up.
Hey, well, John stepping up. When they say reprioritize budget, one question I had is, we really expect it to be reprioritizing budget when we did a wastewater study. If you're doing a wastewater study and you don't come out reprioritizing budget, then then you didn't need to do the study. I mean, this is expected, so it's not like we knew we had problems that were going to be costly, so.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ed, and John, thanks for telling them how much, and then I do not have a check for that amount to hand you and go, here you go, get this finished, but at a high level, there's been very good progress made on SSO reduction in the last 2 to 3 years. That construction project that John alluded to south of town on Green Street, that was your worst SSO. That's been addressed in a costly fashion, and that so you're gone from 11 to 8, and then here's the story to ultimately be able to get to a much lower number. Ultimately, we'll try to get to 0 on the SSOs. So there has been good progress made. The other thing I would say is it's much more data-driven on how to attack this than maybe it would have been a decade ago. We've always relied on what staff know, seat of the pants out in the system and seeing. They see, no one has x-ray vision, so you see what's happening underground. You see sanitary sewage that may be coming out of a manhole lid, but the location where the problem is causing it versus where it actually leaves the system, that is hard to figure out where that is and then why. With the data that's been collected, it's data-driven, the flow monitoring study, those basins that John put up there, then that correlation of where the SSOs are with these bottlenecks, with a great degree of confidence, we know what is causing that problem. Where 10 years ago, it's coming out of the ground and we're not sure why. So that there's been good progress on the why that it's occurring, and then once we know the why, we can figure out how to address it. So that this flow monitoring and with the collection system, the other things that are being done in the collection system with cleaning, lining, and even capital projects, it's a very data-driven process so that you can feel that you're getting your money's worth and getting to these solutions that is going to solve the problem. So that's the end of my commercial on how this is being attacked. And it's good news that we've already got 3 off the list. So, and John, I'm here to, those funding options that are shown on the slide, none of this is a recommendation. It would be termed as, these are considerations for the utility board and or the city, if they can or would be able to be a part of it, to consider. That's all that they are. But now you do have the number when you have those conversations, either with, as utility board members, of reprioritizing the budget. If this is a priority that would move above some other things that we had in the 2021 budget, you can make that move. Or even looking at what you would do in 2022. There's some availability fee funds that are there. I would tie some of the problems to on these SSOs due to the development that's occurred out northeast. I mean, those back when these sewers were originally designed where the SSOs are, no one anticipated development out on the North Auburn Meadows, phase 1, phase 2. So that availability fees could be used as part of the solution of this. It meets that criteria. City assistance, if this is something that...
Just a second, John. I'm sorry. We already have availability fees, right? So are you suggesting that they...
The money that you have currently, Aaron, so you have a bucket of availability fee funds.
Okay.
That bucket would be eligible for this, just to advise the board, is that's something that the board should consider to solve this problem. There's growth-related components of development in the past, so it passes that test.
Thank you.
Sure. City assistance we alluded to. Very recently, there's been American Rescue funds. You're allowed to, those things are allowed to be spent on water and wastewater and broadband. So this would fall under that definition. That money comes to the city. It would have to flow from the city to the utilities, but that is something that could be done. And then there's always the option of doing a rate increase based on if you don't have sufficient cash or funds in hand. And these are just things to consider, want to throw out there to let you know, here's some possibilities to be able to solve this problem. As John alluded to, I think the solution of being able to use the north side sanitary sewer force main, there was 2 of those built in anticipation of a large amount of flow coming from the north. That saved, $1 million was your number there. That's a very creative solution using some capacity in the existing system, as opposed to Ed's point of where maybe some other studies have done, put in a 48-inch gravity all the way from by the Dairy Queen and get it to the plant. That's, that's a number that's above 10 million. So this is a very, I think, a creative and a cost-effective solution to make a big dent and possibly get to elimination of SSOs is what you have here in front of you. So again, not recommendations, considerations for the board and/or discussion across the hall with the mayor on here's some things that we can do to solve this problem.
So the number's 2.75 million? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'd say 2.75 to 3.25. And
3.25?
probably if we're talking, might want to stay on the high side to start off with.
Okay.
John, is that what multi years, or is that pretty much? That construction.
You want to go back to that? So this drawing right here, or this schematic right here, this could be done in phases. The lift station and downstream of that could be a phase 1.
What part are you calling downstream, the black or the?
Black.
Okay.
And then the gravity sewer that's upstream and the creek crossing could be a phase 2. But to understand the full effect and the benefit that you get requires both pieces to be built. But it could be done on a phase basis to get to the overall
Okay, let me
solution.
understand phase 1 then. So you've got the new line going west to the existing, one of the 15-inch lines.
It's a.
And so, go ahead.
So Aaron, there's a lift station, and then we're intercepting the current existing sanitary sewers, their size and depths, and we're removing that flow from the current collection system and basically bypassing where the problems are.
Yep.
That's an immediate benefit that you get, but that by itself will not entirely solve the problem.
Sure.
The deeper gravity sewer that gets all the way over to the west edge of the country club or the golf course, that's going to solve the creek crossing problem and eliminate that bottleneck, and then that's still going to be pumped where it bypasses the downstream areas where the SSOs are occurring. It can be done in 2 pieces, but you don't get the full benefit till phase 2 is done.
But what I want, give me a feel for how much benefit we can get from phase 1.
From phase 1, I would say you would probably eliminate the 3 SSOs on Victoria Drive. That would really be and that's kind of where we started with this, was intercept what was coming from basin C, D, and E before it got to be pumping around. What was great is, as we were going through this, is we saw, I talked about that domino effect, where if you fix a sewer, you have to go all the way back to the plant, unless you stop at a lift station and pump it to the plant. So in essence, by fixing that upstream sewer, you don't have to go all the way back. You just have to make the lift station deep enough to accept what's coming from upstream. So
John did a better job of answering that than I did. The lift station and the downstream force mains, the 3 X's, the overflows, as I look at it to the left, those would be corrected in phase 1. The remaining 4 would be in phase 2.
Hey, guys, if the green light's given and the financing's figured out, what's the time frame on a start to finish on a phase 1 and a start to finish on a phase 2? How long does that take?
I want to answer it first if you did the whole thing.
Yeah, if you did.
Have a 6 to 9 month period for design, right-of-way acquisition, and permitting. Let's allow a year for construction. So, Neil, I talk in terms of 24 to 30 months when you start your phase to when you go, okay, we got this substantially complete.
Yeah.
It's operating as impacted. If you pulled Yeah, I would look at 30 months plus or minus 6 from that, whether you do separate phases or 2. If you wait a couple years between phases, then obviously you
Yeah.
got to wait till the end.
But ideally, if you can do it all at once and go, it could be done in 30, 36 months max.
It'd be complete and
3 years.
constructed in
3
2
years.
to 3, Bill. And the caveats on that would be the design's fairly straightforward and the timing of that. There's going to be some land acquisition, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, at least where we put it in Race Park, I mean, that's city-owned land, but again, as we
Working
found
with
out
the
that
city,
wrongly,
yeah.
it doesn't mean that we can put it wherever we want.
Yeah, we had preliminary discussions with the city, and they're good with
The
it.
qualifier on that, the land acquisition process could be 2 months or it could be 12, depending who the parcel owners are and how many. That's what I think the biggest qualifier would be on this, is how land acquisition would go.
Let me ask a question. You say 12 months construction, is that just for phase 1 or for both phases together?
Phase 1.
Phase 1.
Okay, thank you.
If you did that all, and, it might be 2 construction seasons if you bid it all off at once, depending on what time of year you did the letting. So, and we'd be happy to drill down into that a little more if the utility, these are schematics and a preliminary. If you're like, I'd really like to see a little more effort on doing this either phased or all at once to come back with a little bit better budget numbers and also timing, we'd be happy to do that. We haven't gone to that effort yet. If that's,
But we are planning on, that's part of the overall wastewater study, and that's where we're kind of drilling into this. The goal is, by the budget season that Ryan and I have said, is to have a wastewater capital improvement plan that would include these type of projects. Obviously, to me, this project would be very high on the top, even though it might cost more than some of the other projects. But I feel pretty confident speaking for Ryan on this, is when he took over, and I think Ed's been the same thing, finding out that you have SSOs, they have been saying the term SSO in meetings and things like that, trying to draw awareness that they've been a problem for a while and they want to address them and get rid of them.
Yeah, it's the top problem on our hazard ranking assessment for wastewater, so it's appropriate to address it.
correct. And it's, I don't think we want it from a policy point of view for the city or utilities to get it to the point where this problem would continue and we continue to improve developments out northeast. I mean, we're just aggravating an existing problem.
That's
So
right.
that fundamental thing is like, one thing you can do is like, we're not going to make this any worse, but we're not going to allow any future development to take place. So if it's a policy thing to be able to grow on that corner of town, and this is a problem we would recommend, let's get out ahead of this and solve that issue.
And I'd hate to pick only on the Northeast. Looking back on this, I think it's as early as like the Kai's apartment lift station being connected over. It was the closest place, but probably, seems to be a major contributor. So it's not like this is, new growth. This is gradual growth that has been kind of getting us, and probably creeping up on everybody more than just, there's one thing that got added and it's causing all these problems. It's kind of a north-wide.
Yeah, and growth and SSOs go together, because they may have put this in and it may have looked really smart 20 years ago when there was hardly any flow in any of the lines. But then when you have growth happen, more SSOs happen. And John's not ready with details yet, but there's going to be future lift stations that move some of this stranded capacity in the plant that we have from expanding it further south to where the development's happening. So there's probably going to be a lift station that effectively does that by being, by pumping capacity out of the south part of the system to the plant. But we don't have definite plans
This is a concept
on
that
that.
we saw on the 4-H lift station, or move it from an overloaded to one that has some capacity. This concept you're going to see in this location and some others on this overall wastewater master plan.
Well, one thing I would hope that for future development and the future need for lift stations as a result of that future development, within that future development, that the cost of a lift station would be included in the developer's budget.
Sure, that's understood. The degree of a deeper and a bigger lift station for other development, that's part of that availability, fee review, and credit. Right, both of those things need to happen, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and this is just for information, so we're not really asking for the board for a decision, just if any further questions, just forward them on, and
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
I think I'm encouraged by seeing 11 to 8 now. I mean, there's been progress, and it's
Yeah.
obviously come to flow, no pun intended, but recently with all this, and so I appreciate the plan. It's fairly easy to understand, and thanks for the info.
Yeah, I want to make a personal comment that when I was appointed to this board by the mayor, that I identified as this is one of my special interest areas, and that if he didn't want me to pursue it, don't appoint me. So you've got a recipient board member here to getting this solved.
So Aaron, I don't know if you remember this, but about 10 years ago when we had the rate increase for the wastewater at that time, John showed this picture tonight of the sewer that was exposed. We had the same thing 10 years ago for the 48-inch that went into the plant. That was before the risk assessment was done, but that was the whole south side of town, that flow that came. I remember in a meeting with you and at that time Mike Martin to show you this rate increase will address this 48-inch sewer that's exposed in Prairie Creek. You can see it, and we don't know if it's fully supported. That was addressed. That was the highest risk that the utility had at that time, and there's been good progress on this risk. I don't know if you remember that particular meeting, but once we showed you that picture and you understood that 80% of the flow from the city of Lebanon is exposed in that creek, that's not a good idea. We need to address that. We've got some similar elements on this here as well.
Okay.
But for citizens to know, over a 10-year period, there's been really good things that have been done. The risk have been reduced, but there's still, we've got 8 SSOs that we haven't answered. So, thank you.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, guys. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the flexibility on the timing, too. Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, we'll jump to the next item. Action item is the Impa third amended power sales contract. And this is previously item 4 on the agenda.
Thank you, Board. This is a item that Impa was before you, I believe, at the last meeting and presented a proposed amendment to the power purchase agreement. I am happy to answer any questions, but in essence, this agreement, or in summary, this agreement extends with an expiration date from 2042 to 2050, and it extends the cancellation period from 10 years to 30 years. There's been some question about that 30-year extension that I believe Impa addressed in the meeting, and I will add to that. That's a scary number. And we, as I understand it, that the purpose of that time period is that it matches their bond period and helps their lendability and bond rating. So the procedure would be for the utility board to consider and approve resolution 2021-01 and forward the third amendment to the city council for consideration and execution, if they so choose.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Questions, discussion on this Impa amended power contract?
I think that I kind of go along with Jeff's comment that, to go from the 10 years to 30 years is a big jump. I guess is there any comment from any of the other board members on any thoughts on this?
Well, I think what I would add to Bill's comment is this, it's scary being 30 years, but to me, the last 40 years have been really good because we've dealt with known technologies and pretty known cost. Impa's been great for the city of Lebanon.
Right.
But technologies are changing right now, and we have no idea what the cost of those are going to be in the future.
No.
And that's my concern with going to a 30-year commitment versus the current commitment that we have.
Okay.
I think the 30-year commitment makes sense because Impa has indicated that the necessary projects that need to be completed, we'll have a 30-year bond. So this makes the bond issuers, I guess you would say, comfortable to know that the Impa members are tied in to that 30-year bond. And I think that bond guarantee, in essence, is worthwhile. Also, the possibility of us withdrawing from Impa and finding someone suitable to take Impa's place, I think is pretty remote. So I don't have a great degree of angst when it comes to the 30 years.
All right, any other discussion or questions? I know Jeff actually has to read this resolution for us, so.
Yeah, and I guess we have two options. If the board wants to proceed with voting on the resolution, I can move forward with reading as Neil suggested. Or if the board wants more time, this could certainly be continued and we can explore that 30 versus 10-year term with Impa, hearing that that's a concern that has been somewhat explored with them, and I don't want to say we got necessarily not a warm feedback from them, but this is sort of what the agreement is, and we are one of the, I think there are a handful of communities that still have yet to execute this. I don't have a time period that they need these executed by. Do you, Ed?
I don't have an exact time period, but I do have Brian Brackmeyer, who's watching on YouTube. I could call him if you had any questions that you wanted to, want them to field for us.
I don't think we should get into that, but
No.
from a, so that's sort of the, those are the two options that I see, is it vote on the resolution or continue the matter.
What do you think, Neil?
I mean, I'd ask you guys, I think, I would say we should vote on it, but I'm not saying that we absolutely have to. I think it's pretty straightforward, and we've discussed, and we kind of know what the cards on the table are. But if anybody feels like, hey, we should take a longer look at this or discuss it further, I don't have a problem pushing it off, but I guess we don't need Jeff to read this if we don't want to vote, so.
I think we ought to push it off, but that's just me.
Well, we did bring this to the board's attention about a year ago, so
Yep.
just saying.
Are you guys comfortable bringing it to a vote, or, I mean, if we push it off, how long? I hate to just say push it off and it floats around.
Yeah. I'm on the Finance Committee, and this was also brought before the Finance Committee, so I have some additional information, I guess you say, that I've had time to digest. I intend to make a motion to pass the resolution. Now, I ask the council, if that motion fails, can it be brought back up?
Yes, sir, it could.
Okay.
No, at a subsequent meeting.
So that's my answer there. Yeah.
So perhaps I should read, if so inclined, I'll go ahead and read the resolution.
Yeah, go ahead. Ray.
Resolution 2021-01, a resolution of the Utility Service Board of the City of Lebanon, Indiana, approving amendment of the power sales contract with the Indiana Municipal Power Agency. Whereas the City of Lebanon, Indiana, by and through the Lebanon Utility Service Board, owns and operates a municipal electric utility, Lebanon Utilities, for the purposes of distributing electricity in the city and surrounding areas. And whereas the city is a member of the Indiana Municipal Power Agency, and that relationship is governed by the power sales contract as amended between the city and Impa. And whereas the power sales contract, Impa agreed to sell and deliver to the city, and the city agreed to purchase and receive from Impa all electric power and energy which the city required for the utilities operation for a term expiring April 1st, 2042. And whereas Impa plans for its power supply on a 30-year timeline, and the power supply resources considered can take 5 to 10 years or more for development and construction with useful lives of decades longer. And whereas the changing public opinions and government regulations relating to climate change and carbon dioxide emissions require that Impa be able to adjust its power supply portfolio as the need arises. And whereas major new power supply resources would require the issuance of debt with a long-term, at least 30 years, amortization of debt service and associated costs to provide the most economic and reliable power supply to the city and Impa's other members. And whereas it is in the best interest of Impa and the city to amend the power sales contract in the form attached as Exhibit A to extend the existing term through April 1st, 2050, with a 30-year notice of termination that would allow Impa the discretion to issue new debt with a long-term amortization if necessary. Now therefore be it resolved by the board that the board recommends to the common council that it take appropriate action to adopt and implement the proposed amendment to the contract.
Thanks, Jeff. And this, and am I right, ultimately, if this passes this board, it still goes to city council? Is that?
That's correct.
Correct?
Our resolution is a recommendation to the city council to approve the amendment to the third amendment to the power sales contract.
Okay. Any other questions, discussions, or motions to be entertained on this item?
I move to approve Resolution 2021-01, recommending that the city to approve the third amended power sales contract with Impa.
Have a motion by Aaron. Do we have a second?
I'd second that motion.
Got a motion by Aaron and a second by Jim to approve Resolution 2021-01, recommending the city approve the third amended power sales contract with Impa. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
Aye.
No.
We have 2 ayes and 2 noes. Is that right? 2 yeses, 2 noes?
Yes.
That's correct.
So I'd cast the deciding vote. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to vote aye just because I think it was brought up earlier how our history with Impa is solid. We've been very happy with them. And secondly, the fact that this is a recommendation by us that still has to go through the city. And so I feel comfortable voting yes on this action item. Okay, let's jump to the next item. Indiana's Drinking Water SRF Loan Program is an action item as well. And who's handling this tonight?
I think Sandra's handling that one, or?
John or
Oh, no,
Sandra?
John.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry, Sandra.
Probably be me. I'm not sure which, I think there's 2 items. I'm not sure which one's up first.
Is the signatory
Yeah.
authority for SF, or sorry?
Yeah, so the signatory authority
Oh, no,
resolutions.
wrong.
Sorry, I
I messed
think
up.
the first one is the Drinking Water SRF.
Oh, okay. It's
Sorry.
so it's for the, so they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
As you guys know, we had a rate adjustment a few years back that kind of is fueling our SRF loan program. So the SRF loan program, we previously submitted a preliminary engineering report, kind of outlining all the projects and the funding we planned for that program. We have since updated that based off of our capital improvement plan. We took some projects out and added in the Aberdeen-Longley Water Storage Facility project. We then needed to submit an amended preliminary engineering report. That's all this resolution is doing, is allowing us to make a resolution that the board is good with the preliminary engineering report submission, or resubmission, I guess.
All right, questions for John on either of these? I know 5 and 6, he said go hand in hand. Any questions, discussion on these items? And we'll address 5 first.
I'm happy to read the resolution. Resolution 2021-02, resolution accepting Indiana's Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Loan Program preliminary engineering report. Whereas the Lebanon Utility Service Board of the City of Lebanon, Indiana operates a municipally owned utility known as Lebanon Utilities, which provides potable water to its ratepayers through the utility's water system. Whereas the board finds it is in the best interest of the ratepayers, the utility, and the City of Lebanon to expand, improve, and maintain the infrastructure of the water system. Whereas the state of Indiana operates a drinking water state revolving fund loan program that provides low interest rate financing to construct drinking water infrastructure. Whereas the board has caused a preliminary engineering report dated March 1st, 2021 to be prepared by the consulting firm of Butler, Fairman, and Seifert. Whereas the PER has been presented to the public at a properly noticed public hearing held March 31st, 2021 for public comment. Whereas there was no public objection or comment in opposition to the PER recommended projects as detailed in the attached Exhibit A. Therefore, the board finds that there was not sufficient evidence presented in objection to the projects. Whereas the board finds that the projects detailed in the PER are necessary for the safe, efficient, and effective operation of the water system. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Lebanon Utility Service Board that the PER dated March 1, 2021 be approved and adopted by the Lebanon Utility Service Board, and said PER be submitted to the State Revolving Fund Loan Program for review and approval.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Questions or discussion after Jeff's reading here that need addressed or can entertain a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 2021-02, accepting Indiana's Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Loan Program.
I have a motion by Tim. Do we have a second?
A second.
Motion by Tim, second by Bill to approve the Resolution 2021-02, accepting Indiana's Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Loan Program. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And then we'll jump to 6, which is the signatory authority for the SRF Loan Program. Have a reading there as well, Jeff?
Yes, and in essence, this is sort of a house cleaning item to bring things in line with the SRF loan program. I believe that previously Mike Whitman was the signatory, and this is...
We actually, he was the original signatory. We did switch to Sandra. Morgan, at the time, back before we did the Sugar Creek project, this is just another, Jeff said it probably best, it's a housekeeping. SRF has just requested that we, with this resubmittal, have the same, basically the same resolution, just allowing Sandra to continue to be the signatory authority.
Resolution 2021-03, a resolution providing for signatory authority for the State Revolving Fund Loan Program, whereas the City of Lebanon Utility Service Board operates a municipally owned utility known as Lebanon Utilities, whereas the Lebanon Utilities of Indiana has plans for a drinking water infrastructure improvement project to meet the state and federal regulations, and the participant intends to proceed with the construction of such project. And whereas in order to move forward with the project, the utility desires to make application for funding purposes to the State Revolving Fund Loan Program. Now therefore be it resolved by the board, the governing body of the participant, that Sandra Morgan, CFO, be authorized to make application for a SRF loan and provide the SRF loan program such information, data, and documents pertaining to the loan process as may be required, and otherwise act as the authorized representative of the participant. The participant agrees to comply with the state and federal requirements as they pertain to the SRF loan program, and 2 certified copies of the resolution be prepared and submitted as part of the participants' preliminary engineering report.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions on that, or entertaining a motion?
I make a motion, we approve resolution number 2021-03.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Jim to approve Resolution 2021-03, providing signatory authority for the State Revolving Fund Loan Program. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Next item we have is the Sunbrook Section 2 electric system install. It's an action item as well, and Jeff Greeno is here tonight to discuss that. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am bringing the Sunbrook Section 2 electric install for the system there. This will include the installation of conduits, transformer pad boxes, secondary pedestals, and primary junction boxes. The electric department, we sent out requests for quotes to different companies to do this work, and we also asked Alpha Engineering to send out requests for quotes, and we received only 2 quotes back. This is covered under the capital additions under the 2021 budget, serves 2 new facilities. And I would like to recommend that the Lebanon Utility Service Board award the Sunbrook Section 2 electric system install to Windhoven Pipeline for the amount of $16,217.50, subject to legal review and finalization of the contract. Authorizing General Manager Ed Basquill to sign all necessary documents. Do you have any questions?
Hey, Jeff, thanks. I always ask this, but are you familiar with Windhoven, or have we done anything with them?
Actually, Windhoven currently, they're doing Ullin.
Yeah.
Okay. Easy answer there.
Easy.
Any other questions for Jeff? All right, if not, I would entertain a motion on this item.
I make a motion and we move to approve the award for Sunbrook Section 2 electrical system install for Windhoven pipe in the amount of $16,217.50, subject to legal review and finalization of contract, authorizing General Manager Ed Basquill to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by Tim to approve the award of the Sunbrook Section 2 electric system to Windhoven in the amount of $16,217.50, and it's subject to legal review and finalization of the contract, authorizing our general manager to sign all necessary documents. Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Next item is the liquid emulsion polymer approval. It's an action item as well. And who's addressing that tonight, Ed?
I'll tee it up.
Okay.
Normally Ryan would.
Okay.
But this is for approval of the polymer, the liquid emulsion polymer we use mainly for the centrifuge. You may remember a few months back, we had a bid that we disallowed and rebid because we had a vendor complain about our process. Since that time, we worked with Wastewater Engineering on how these polymers are typically bid for municipalities. We use the same methodology as Citizens Energy and many others. It is a difficult thing to bid because it is not a professional service, so it has to be bid. But it's special, but not quite a commodity, because it's not like where you're buying chlorine where all the chlorine is the same because everyone makes their own special mixture. So we came up with the process and copied what others had done and sent it out for bid and only got one bid response. The person who had complained did not bid on it and wanted to come to this meeting and couldn't make it. But I'm going to go ahead and recommend we go with this bid. and we can always change this process in the future. I also want to make mention that, I want to say 2 meetings ago, we talked about in the future, we may use chemicals as inventory because there's actually a per pound price that we're approving tonight and not an actual amount. If you notice on our estimated sheet, it looks like we're over budget, but that's a projected over budget because we don't know how much we're going to use. And with polymer, we're going to use what we're going to use. We're going to keep using it because the plant's going to keep operating, which is pretty much the definition we covered last time when Jeff Jacob was presenting to us of the of what should be an inventory item, things like wire and pipe. So with that, I think Jeff had more to add because he had some discussions with the guy who complained about the bid.
Yeah, so, thank you. So, something that I've sort of learned in this process is that, these are, you could have a $1 polymer and a $5 polymer, and unique to your system and the climate and the conditions that you may have, it may be better to use the more expensive one. But by the same token, they're not such a specialty item. And so, we did have a vendor that complained, and I want to just be clear, it was not about the legality of the process. It was that our process is inefficient because we bid it and we publicized that bid process. What this vendor believes should happen is he should be allowed to come in and present his specialty product and based upon its performance, should be able to step in and receive the contract. Couple things to just point out to the board. One, the centrifuge, and John, please correct me if I'm misstating, or Ed, but the centrifuge is somewhat of a new piece of equipment for us, and we're still learning. I believe this is the second year that we have used, maybe the third, that we have used a polymer, and we're still sort of learning what that is. So when the issue was raised last time, Ryan reached out to Bob Holden, and Bob is the one that designed the centrifuge at Wessler Engineering, and said, hey, how do we do this? And Bob came back and said, well, yeah, the process that you used is legally correct, but it's not as tailored to your system, and you may get sort of a shotgun response. So he put together a bid spec, and that bid spec allowed for vendors to come in and do testing and sample the system and learn about what range of chemicals would work for our system. So that bid spec was designed based upon what our needs were, not the needs of potentially other vendors. So again, we may change this system in the future as we learn more about it, but this was a legally compliant, open process that was based upon the gentleman or the engineering company who designed the system's recommendation and his specialized bid spec. I know there are some people out there that, in this bid process that don't like it, don't believe it's efficient, don't win, but, we're bound, much like Citizens, who is doing this same process, we're bound by a certain set of rules and regulations, and until we learn more about the system, this is the process that Ryan was comfortable using, and I agree.
So with that, I request that the board approve the Polydyne Inc. To supply Lebanon Utilities water treatment plant with the liquid emulsion polymer in the amount of $2.47 a pound.
One question, Ed, what was comparative costs last year?
Let's see, John might have that information.
Yeah, so actually, not to muddy the waters more, but Butler, Fairman, Cipher, we took those technical specs from Bob
Good.
Holden after talking, and Butler, Fairman, Cipher had actually put out the RFP. So I actually kind of facilitated the project and then was kind of outside looking in a little bit. Those same type of questions. The Polydyne product that you're using, or that is actually what they're using currently at the plant. That's what was available. This was just slightly higher, I think, when they were looking at it, but it was a very comparable rate. I'm not sure exactly what the exact rate Ed just read. Was it $2.47?
$2.47.
I think it might be like $2.20 right now. So it was in the realm of reasonable when everybody looked at it. And just wanted to point out that with that being an RFP process, qualifications and things like that were part of the thing. We only had the one bidder, but did talk with the wastewater staff, did talk with everybody, that polymer is working and has been proven to work in their system.
I do think we want to make sure that we engage other vendors for specialty chemicals, because price swings can happen very quickly with specialty chemicals, not commodity chemicals, but specialty chemicals. And I don't, Jeff obviously spoke with the second vendor. If they want to come in and they want to try to convince Ryan and the team, I think that's fine. But we want to make this as competitive possible, because specialty chemicals can get expensive in a hurry.
And I think I brought that up at the last meeting too.
Yeah, and for the record, Butler Firm, I sent out the ad to 5 different chemical companies that all do this type of work. So only one responded, but we did reach out to 5 separate companies to try to get interest. I think, as Jeff pointed out, there might have been some that had issues with the bid process, and that's why you didn't get that, but hopefully we can get everybody kind of on the same page next year.
Thanks,
All right,
John.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jeff and Ed. Any other questions or discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Let's see. I move to approve the bid from Polydyne, Inc. for liquid emulsion polymer in the amount of $2.47 per pound, subject to legal review and finalization of the contract, authorizing General Manager Ed Baskell to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Motion made by Aaron, seconded by Tim, to approve the bid from Polydyne, Inc. for liquid emulsion polymer in the amount of $2.47 a pound. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you, guys. We've already covered item 9 earlier, the sanitary sewer overflow response. We'll jump to approval of the claims, payroll, and transfers. Everyone had a chance to review the claims, and if so, any questions or discussion?
Where are the claims? Oh, they're right there. Okay. Need to sign those before I leave.
No, I'm all right. I'm all right. I got 5 minutes.
Got a motion for the claims?
I make a motion, we approve the claims.
Motion by Bill, have a second?
Second.
Motion by Bill, seconded by Jim, to approve the claims dated April 14th, 2021, in the amount of $2,808,795.11 for claims, and payroll totaling $6,139,719.40 for transfers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All righty, next item is other business that may come before the board. Anybody have anything else for the board before we ask the public?
I have 2 quick things. I just want to shout out to Ryan Ottinger, John Hemmerly, and staff, because the wastewater response to these SSOs has been something that's been very time-consuming for them in this very rainy spring, and kudos to our whole staff for responding to that. And they've been answering my questions, walking around with engineers. Well, I think Commissioner Smith was out there, and they were out showing him some things. So I want to thank them for their wisdom and their dedication and their professionalism.
And I second that.
I also want to tee up for the board, is there interest in a facilities tour? I'm envisioning maybe us having a board meeting early one time, and all loading on a bus and just looking at some of our major facilities. I could have staff available to answer questions. I don't know if, we haven't done that in my whole time here. Last year I was hoping to do something like that, but COVID hit. Is that something you want me to work on scheduling?
Yeah, I know that when I came on the board, one thing I did was go and see everything and kind of schedule that individually, but I think we should keep that open for anyone who wants to do that. And if you want to set something up and people say, sure, let's explore it at least, because I think it's important to know where, that we know where everybody's working every day and what stuff does and how it looks. I know I was surprised at a few things, so I think it's a good idea.
Okay, well, we'll work that into the plan, and thanks, that's all I had.
Yeah, and thanks to you and Ryan as well, as you mentioned earlier. I know I had some questions about the SSOs when it kind of came to light, so thanks for jumping on that.
I have a question for Jeff. We need to sign some documents, don't we, before we leave tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the resolutions, I believe Danielle has, and there'll be 6 signatures, two copies.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else have any other business for the board? Don't see any public here tonight. Ed, do we have any electronic comments from the public?
No, we do not.
Looks like our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, April 28th at 5 PM. And if there isn't anything else for the board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. Motion by Bill, multiple seconds to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.